Hey everyone, how's it going? Today I would like to take the time to talk about Zenith: The Last City. Zenith is an early access VR-exclusive MMORPG developed in Unity. It is available on several platforms including Steam VR, MetaQuest, and PlayStation 4. The game is very clearly inspired by JRPGs, animes, and any review of this game wouldn't be possible without mentioning the obvious comparison to Sword Art Online. It features a highly stylized world with several movement options to explore it, ranging from grappling, gliding, and climbing. The game also includes several systems such as pet collection, gathering, crafting, and even player housing. There are 3 different classes, 2 of which have 3 different roles to them, the third one being only a DPS class. The game is currently being developed by a small indie studio on a comparatively tight budget of around $50 million and crowdfunding of around $280,000. This means that not only are they faced with the challenges of creating an MMORPG, but they are also faced with the challenges of VR development. This game is a cautionary tale about setting your sights too high without the necessary resources to achieve it. I, however, jumped into this game with no expectations or having read any of the promises made in the original Kickstarter, and as such, I would like to guide you on a step-by-step going through my mind as a new player jumping into this game for the very first time. And after that, I would like to give my honest opinion about the game, what it set out to achieve, and where it is currently. So, I have no idea what I'm in for. You are first greeted with a very standard character creator, although I will say that the distance between where your character model is and where your UI is very far apart, which makes it hard to create a character in VR, as I often find myself looking left and right trying to figure out where the options are and seeing the results. This is not a big deal considering the options are limited, but in a future iteration where there are more options, this will be a very big setback. Okay, I guess we'll go with very light brown, because there's no dark brown. Once the character is done, you're presented with the class options. And I of course picked the support mage, because if there's any class fantasy that I enjoy playing, it's the one that dictates who gets to live and who gets to die. However, I would like to point out that the role description is the same for every class, even if the class description is different. At this point, you have no preview of what your skills will be, or how your role will affect your playstyle. After creating a character and before you're thrown into the VR world, you're presented with an option that I think every VR game should have. If you've never played a VR game before, you might not know, but some people get motion sickness while playing VR, while others can play it very perfectly without any issues. There are 2 main ways of combating motion sickness in VR games, the first of which is teleporting you directly to the place that you're pointing at, and the other is limiting your field of view whenever you are in movement. This game not only allows all 3 options to be available, being third-person movement, the field of view limitation which is highly customizable for every different action that you can be partaking in, or disabling altogether for the people who are very comfortable with VR. I myself am somewhere in the middle where I can comfortably play with limited field of view, but I highly appreciate the option so the game can be enjoyed by everyone. There's also an option for whenever you are streaming the game, so you can not have these options for the stream. I, however, only realized this on the second character, so throughout most of the video, you're going to see a limited field of view, as I would with the VR glasses. Sorry about that. Once you have that all figured out, you're presented with the opening cutscene. The story boils down to heroes fought against the bad guys, they lost, and Zenith is the only city that remains. You are a new generation of heroes and are going to be trained accordingly. After fumbling through the options a bit, changing my vignette settings, and trying to turn off my microphone, as this game is constantly recording your audio, something that I know only because I read through the terms and conditions. Nowhere beyond that has the game even told me that people are going to be listening to me. This assumption that I should know that a system exists is a pattern that you'll see throughout the whole video. The jump tutorial mentions that each jump will cost stamina, but as you can see, it does not cost stamina. Additionally, I seem to be able to do jumps in the air in certain directions, a limited amount of times, and it seems as though these times recharge over time. However, this mechanic is not and will not be explained. It seems like the jump mechanic, for example, might have been remade since the tutorial was made, and in which case it should be updated accordingly. On the topic of remade, it seems like there's an area with holographic enemies that is not used throughout the tutorial, but exists within the tutorial section, somewhere in the corner of a map. If it exists, why not take the opportunity and tell players, if they want to hone their skills, they could go to that area and fight some monsters. This would be a great opportunity to give players their complete class kit when they reach the max level, and allow them to try out different styles. Explain the class system, explain healing abilities, explain tanking abilities, explain parrying, none of which is done in the tutorial. So why is there a... How do I put it back? Okay, I'm probably gonna need this. And this is someone else's, I think. They just left it here. So I'm just gonna walk here.
Ellie here. Can you
Leave
hear
this.
me?
The combat tutorial itself is nothing to write home about, but having a visual video explanation is nice. I will point out, however, that I failed to understand the reasoning behind only showing you one skill during the tutorial, but as soon as you finish a quest, you get 2 extra skills. If you were just going to level me up and give me the skills anyway, why wouldn't you do so earlier and give me the chance to test out the skills? Maybe do it incrementally, instead of telling me I can do one motion in one direction, and in the future I'll be able to do more. Give me one, make sure that I master that one, and then give me another. This also puts the player in a situation where they don't know exactly what a skill does, and there are other ways of activating abilities that are not mentioned in the tutorial. But anyway, we finish our training, we're about to go rest, and all of a sudden we're under attack.
Just follow my lead and do exactly as I say. Got it?
Got it. I'm going to guess something is going to go horribly wrong, and I'm not going to be able to follow your instructions the whole way through. Things do in fact go horribly wrong. We're giving conflicting information about staying or moving. Hopefully this is a plot hook, where eventually we figure out this person was bad the whole time. I will say that the score is pretty good, however the voice acting leaves a lot to be desired.
That's what all the other little ones thought too. Oh, somebody please think of the children. Damn it, kid. I told you to keep moving. Run.
Anyway, eventually we reach a gate that we're told to destroy, however there is no gate, and a very short introduction to gliding. We then go through a portal and reach our first settlement. After I make my way to the first quest giver, 2 things happen as a culmination of poor explanation. I completely dropped the ball on that one, and realized that I have a teleport while trying to open the menu. Putting your players through sudden, unexpected movement is not something that you want to do in VR. Anyway, it's at this point that the game starts to show its lack of polish, and of course, as you've heard so far, I'll be pointing it out throughout the whole way. Like, it's cool and all that you're giving me things, but I want to know what this is. Can you... No? No? Okay, never mind. Anyway, we've unlocked fast travel. However, we haven't explained how to fast travel. And I can already hear you say,
"But master, you just have to open the world map and click your destination. Everybody knows that."
As far as game explanations are concerned, I don't even know that there's a world map. And you also have to keep in mind that this game is trying to cater to 2 different audiences: VR players and MMORPG players. The same people who have experience with VR games are not the same people who have experience with RPGs. Not to mention, people could be playing this game as their very first MMO. You can't just expect people to know things. So the first quest has us going through several waypoints, and I take the opportunity to try out the combat system. But I'll save combat for later. The quest has us picking up a box that is a little bit finicky to open. It has us running back to the quest giver. However, they make an odd decision of making you go through waypoints on your way back. It's like they want to help you and hold your hand, but they forget to hold your hand in the parts that matter. I just came from there, I know how to get back. And if I didn't, the immersion breaking giant beam of light would tell me where it is. Then they have us give 150 materials to build a research station, 20 at a time, for some reason. And then a whole building, person included, materializes into existence. We are informed that we've learned new crafting blueprints, however the crafting system is never really explained. This new NPC gives us a multi-tool, and expects us to be proficient with it on the very next time we talk to her, although never having told us how to use it. Sure, let me use a tool that I don't know how to use because I haven't been taught how to use it. So these are my weapons. Is it like... Oh. It is here. Thumbstick down to select the attachment. Thumbstick down. Oh, click. Okay. Okay. This might be a bit of a trope for everyone who's into playing VR games, where you can just grab things from your shoulder. But that's something you should teach your players, because not everyone's gonna know that, right? Because at least these ones here, I can see them. And now I'll give you another reason why you shouldn't rely on people's past experiences to know how to play your game. My only experience with grappling hooks in VR is from playing a game called Swarm. In this game, you pull yourself closer to where you're grappled by pulling back on the controller. However, that does not work in Zenith. With that aside, The grappling hook is probably the most fun part of the whole game, although it can be very inconsistent on what will pull you closer and what will swing you, and where you can and can't grapple. The next series of events, although not interesting to watch, are probably the most fun personally, because this is when I started randomly exploring things. Doing a random event with a random stranger, and activating several pillars. One of them was not a mere activation, but the start of an actual boss. Right, there was no build-up to this boss fight, there was no mention of anything in the quest dialogue, and yes, I am one of those people. So, time to talk about combat. Combat is bland. There's no really other word to describe it. The combat system fails in both the MMORPG sense and in the VR sense. Right, when you make a claim of a VR MMORPG, I expect either the VR combat to hold up, or I expect the MMORPG combat to hold up. Combat is, as a mage, holding down the trigger buttons for a set amount of time and letting it go for your charged shot, letting go of your weapons to use your magic spells, and that's it really. Combat is a little... You know? Not sure if I enjoy it. Combat might be because I'm playing a mage. It just feels like this is all I'm doing. And then moving around and avoiding getting hit, but... I figured that maybe my problem was with the mage class, which is why I played again using the Blade Master. But that experience went even worse. When you're in melee range with a giant monster, it's hard to really tell what they're doing. The hitbox on attacks is very weird. Enemies and projectiles like to clip through walls. Enemies just like going and doing their own thing. Sometimes it feels like they've just got other places to be, and they like to walk around you a lot. Overall, it's just a buggy mess. It just feels like playing RuneScape, but every time that you swing you have to do it manually, and if you hit too fast or too slow, you lose out on damage. If you were to put this combat in an MMORPG without the VR, it would not work. Blade Master falls into a similar category. You hold out your weapons until your controller stops vibrating, and then swing. Every third swing you get an extra attack, and then you hold down the trigger with the directional cut to do a skill. You can also parry attacks, but that is not explained, nor do I have any feedback that the parry is going through. If you want ideas on how to make interesting VR combat, you can take a look at a game like Broken Edge, in which the game forces the person to embody the class that they're playing, making them do certain movements that fit the theme of their class, such as a samurai striking poses and being technical with their cuts, or a barbarian doing large swings and gaining momentum. You've got games like Until You Fall that sort of feel like playing Ozu, placing your weapons in the correct place at the correct time to parry attacks. Attacks that you cannot block are also clearly telegraphed. You've got games like Rumble, in which attacks are not cast by simple movement, but a combination of movements that makes them complex. The movements also fit whatever you're trying to cast. There are many ways in which the combat could be fun and engaging, but unfortunately it's not there. It's also not there on the MMORPG side of things. Although there seems to be a holy trinity of sorts, I'm not sure if there's any kind of aggro system. Your skills are also very independent and mostly boil down to do damage, do healing, do shielding, some debuff here and there, but nothing really stood out to me as something you want to do in a specific order or customize the way that you do damage somehow. In most MMORPGs, classes play very differently from each other. They all have a unique playstyle, different equipment that they need, different stats, different ways to play and customize your own character. In Final Fantasy XIV, for example, even though most classes have a 3-button rotation, they all play very differently. They each have their own special mechanic that they play around. Playing an Astrologian healer has you picking out cards and empowering your allies, while playing a Scholar has you managing your fairy and your Ether flow stacks. But luckily for Zenith, they don't need to worry about that. They can just focus on being a good VR title. Wait, what's this? Zenith, the cyberpunk MMO for VR and desktop. Oh boy. Right, remember when I said a tale about setting your sights too high? This is what I mean. This game would not hold up against any other desktop MMORPG. The only thing it has going for it is the gimmick of VR. Let's take a look at some of the promises that they made, shall we? One of the first things that they mention is if you don't have VR yet, you can play on your desktop. Desktop support is also one of the first things that is mentioned in the gameplay section. It also seems like they plan to make it cross-platform, having both the desktop and the VR version within the same world. However, they do mention that you can port your progress from your desktop character to your VR character. If the world is the same, why would I need to do that? In terms of world, they talk about using Spatial OS, and in researching what this was, is pretty alarming. From what I could gather online, it seems like the mix of the pricing model, as well as the communication departments of the company itself, do not seem to inspire much confidence. In January 2019, it seems like there was some dispute between Unity and Improbable, the company behind Spatial OS, and it also seems like Improbable misrepresented their affiliation with Unity. It also seems like the forum and documentation about this tool have been long dead since 2019. They've also deleted some of the blog posts that they linked to in their blog. Overall, it doesn't sound like a company I would trust, but I've left some links in the description if you want to learn more about it yourself. They also talk about character and class customization, saying that instead of having a holy trinity, every class can become each role depending on the skills that you equip. That if you want to play a paladin or maybe a mage tank, the choice is yours. Wait, isn't that the definition of a holy trinity? Games like World of Warcraft have a holy trinity and your class can do different roles. Whoever wrote this doesn't know what they're talking about. Anyway, they also talk about changing your voice, but I guess that's not in the game yet. Now this is one of the things that really scares me. They talk about advanced AI, but if the current AI is anything to go by, I wouldn't believe that they can achieve this. They talk about monsters dodging, hiding, and hunting in lifelike ways, unlike any MMO you've seen before. This is highly ambitious, and I think I've heard something like this before. Maybe in another game that set their sights too high and then ended up failing. Anyway, they talk about a streamlined combat system, which is supposed to leverage the physicality of VR. From their description, it looks like they're talking about something more like Rumble, but the game is not in that state yet. They talk about mastering classes feeling like a new sport or martial art, but as I mentioned, it's all down to vertical and horizontal movements. And then they go on to talk about the story, talk about who's working on the game, etc, etc. All in all, what can I say about this game? The tutorial is too bland. Like, sure, they teach me how to do this thing, and that I have a mana bar, but there's like 20 different things that they haven't told me about. I jumped into this game about a year and a half after its early access launch, expecting at least the fundamentals in the first part of the game ironed out, so that they could show players the potential and keep them engaged for future developments. I expected maybe 1 or 2 areas like this, and not much content else. I expected to see development time being focused on what makes the game a game, and less focus on the social aspects. I expected the game to leverage the VR aspect, making somewhat immersive worlds.
You're one of the first outsiders to experience the majesty of this site in person. Aren't you honored?
Why me? I just decided to fast travel here. Like, there's nothing special about me. I mean, it looks cool, don't get me wrong, but it's just empty. What are you doing? Is she supposed to be crying? Oh yeah, and then wiping the tears. Okay. Yes, hi. However, without players, the world feels barren and dead. NPCs just stand in one place and repeat the same animations over and over. The game has many systems that are not explained. Movement is fun. I mean, if you stripped away the RPG part and just made a game with a grappling hook and gliding, you would save a lot on development costs and it would be about as fun for me. And although it seems like the developers care about their game, a lot of these problems stem from inexperience. Now, would I recommend this game? At its current price point of 25 to 30 euros, I couldn't recommend it. However, 2 hours already gives you a good idea if you're going to enjoy the game or not, and 2 hours is within Steam's refund policy. So if you've got a good enough computer and it's something you think you would enjoy, you can always give it a try. Or if you find a discount or bundle. With that being said, I really hope that the developers focus on the fundamentals, polishing out their new player experience, fixing all the problems with the AI and the combat, and maybe then it'll be worth giving the game another try. Finally, I want to thank you all for watching, and I hope to see you next time.